You're listening to the podcast for all of the news, notes, and breakdowns for your Ohio State Buckeyes. This is Sons of the Shoe with Nick Wilson and Spencer German.
It is Sons of the Shoe, Spencer German here with you, recapping a total domination of Purdue between the Ohio State Buckeyes and Purdue. A game that I think we all kind of figured could go this way. Although, I will say this. The Buckeyes made me look silly in the end because I thought that Purdue was going to cover the 38. 37.5 is what it was when I did the preview show. Ended up being 38, I think, by kickoff. And Ohio State won by 45 because it was 45-0. How about that? I forget what the over-under was for the game, but Ohio State might have covered it all by themselves. I actually want to see if I can find that real quick. It was 53.5. So the over-under did not hit, but they did cover the 37.5. Total domination by the Buckeyes, 45-0. I do want to remind you guys, as always, to like, follow, subscribe, review the Sons of the Shoe podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, the Odyssey app, as you guys know. Also, Apple. I like to emphasize the Apple. That Apple is a good place to listen. And we encourage you to jump in the comment section and watch this show at the 92 to the Fan YouTube channel as well. A lot of different ways that you can get involved in the show and participate and tune in. So we appreciate you as always. Here to recap a total domination of a win for the Buckeyes over Purdue today. It says it in the title. They put the boots to Purdue, and it was kind of what we expected. This Purdue team, as I said, come in was not very good. There was a few drives in this game where they made things kind of interesting. Like they got down to the red zone with a chance to score early on. After Ohio State went up 7-0, Purdue drove basically like all the way down the field and gave themselves a shot to add a score of their own. They got down to the Ohio State 3 and they couldn't punch it in, ended up trying to kick a field goal and they missed it. And that was basically the closest that had ever felt between these two teams from there, because Ohio State, after that first touchdown drive, went on to score touchdown, field goal, touchdown. And then they pulled the starters, handed things over to Devin Brown and Julian Sayin and let things kind of go the rest of the way from there. So, this is, I said it in the preview show, like this was my hope. I said my educated wish, my dream for this team was to win in convincing fashion. They did that today. And I guess my one concern is it still seems like it takes this team a little bit to kind of get going early on, and the offense can't seem to find its rhythm early on. And against a team like Purdue, I didn't necessarily think that was going to be the case. I thought they'd come out swinging and be firing on all cylinders immediately. Didn't quite happen that way. And it took some time to kind of build momentum. And then we saw what happened. They end up pulling away and just absolutely pouring it on Purdue to win this game. And it went the way we expected. But that's maybe the one gripe that I have. But it's hard to really take a lot of gripes out of this game because I thought overall like the team played really well. I actually want to start with just emphasizing the defensive side of the ball, because it does feel like finally, ever since the Oregon game where they just got embarrassed, and it was, they got embarrassed, especially the secondary. We were roasting Denzel Burke together on the post-game show that night and how poor he played against a very talented Oregon wide receiver group. But the defense as a whole, and I get like inferior opponents to Oregon. Nobody has, other than Ohio State and maybe Georgia, nobody has the receiving core that Oregon does. That group is really, really good. And so I get that they're going to challenge you a little bit more. It's going to be more of a test. But like, all around, this defense the last 3 weeks has been just totally dominant. And even when teams get in the red zone, they're holding them to field goals or field goal attempts like we saw today with Purdue. Caleb Downs is playing phenomenal. JT Tuimoloau is playing really good. I thought that today Jack Sawyer had a really nice game as well. And JT obviously forced the fumble that led to the Jack Sawyer scoop and score and allowed the Buckeyes to get that defensive touchdown. this group it feels like firing on all cylinders right now. And it is playing at a level that makes me feel like, yeah, you can win a championship with this group. And listen, I know that there's been plenty of reasons to criticize Jim Knowles and his defense and the way that they've played in certain spots and the lack of pressure that they're able to get. I think the last couple weeks you've seen him call blitzes at the right time. You've seen him be more in tune with how his defense is doing and the right spots to sort of do different things and show different looks. And that is encouraging as well. And I get it. Like, it's against Nebraska, it's against Purdue. Last week was Penn State, though, and they played phenomenal. Maybe the best they played all season against Penn State last week with the goal line stand, the big interception in the end zone by Igbinosin. Like, this team seems like, at least on that side of the ball in particular, they're like really hitting their stride. And that makes me feel good about things. I thought Cody Simon was fantastic today. He obviously registered half a sack. It felt like every time I looked up, I was seeing Cody Simon in on some play or making his presence felt on some play. I thought Lathan Ransom played a really good game today, had the interception, obviously, and that's a big part of that. But like, I don't know, this defense just feels like they are in a groove, and it feels like it's coming at the right time. And you just got to hope they can continue this on this trajectory against Northwestern next week, and then against Indiana, which is a really good Indiana team, as we know, currently leading Michigan 14-3, and then rounding things out with that Michigan game. You hope that the defense can show up and play really well against them and sort of set the tone for, as long as you run the table, this group getting a redemption shot and this defense getting a redemption shot against Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, obviously in December. That's the hope, man. But like, we wondered how they'd respond to the Oregon game just as a whole. And from the defensive side, I feel confident in saying that group took pride in, we need to be better than that game. We can't let that game define us. And I think that their play the last couple of weeks has just been absolutely phenomenal. So I'm very pleased with that side of the ball. Again, JT Tuimola was fantastic today with the forced fumble that was scooped up and led to a score by Jack Sawyer on the 11-yard fumble recovery. Like, those two, seems like they're playing really well off of each other right now. It is a good thing to see. It's a sight for sore eyes that group is finally, it seems, hitting its stride and playing really good football. And it feels like if this team's going to win a championship, they need that defense to be that good. Like, this now feels like a championship caliber defense. I was not feeling that way after the Oregon game, and even early in the season, there were some moments. But like, now I feel confident in saying, like, this group absolutely with that defense can win a national championship. And it's going to be about the offense, not shooting themselves in the foot at times and being able to run the football, as we know. I thought, from what I could tell, this offense today, they ran the football effectively, 173 yards. There were some moments where it seemed like they really couldn't do much. I think Quinshon Judkins started this game like 4 carries, -4 yards. So it wasn't like, again, and maybe that's part of that slow start part of this, or part of the slow start that I bring up. Like, it just seems like it takes them a while to kind of get things going there. And nobody rushing wise had 100 yards today, but Travion Henderson was fantastic. He had 85 yards. Judkins had just 32 with his long of 15. He got the most carries on the day. So there was still something missing, it felt like, in the run game, even though they made that a priority today. And they ran the ball 35 times. They only passed it 26. So they were clearly making a point in trying to run the football. And I thought there'd be a little bit more like building off of what we saw that last drive against Penn State. I think we kind of got there in the second half, but I still need to see more. And honestly, like, I'm at a point, I think, with this offense that phase of the offense specifically, they're just going to have to keep proving it to me. Like, every week I'm going to go into the game saying, let's see what the run game can do today. I'll do it next week against Northwestern, who, again, is not a very good team right now. I'll do it against Indiana a couple weeks from now, because I'll feel like whoever wins that game, gonna have to, if Ohio State's gonna win that game, they're gonna have to establish the run. And we know the team that's won the run battle the last like 10 years or whatever the hell it is against Michigan has won that game as well. So running the football is so important in this sport at this level in particular. And so each week I'm going to go in basically with a clean slate with this group saying, you got to prove it to me again. You got to prove it to me again. I'm not basing anything off of the week before. And I just felt like it took a little bit to get there for the Buckeyes. But I liked what I saw in the second half. I liked that it seemed like they were getting. I like that it seemed like they were getting. They were gaining momentum in the second half. That was good to see. And it feels like there's still something viable there. I just, again, they're going to have to prove it to me because I have PTSD from a team that talk about being physical and tough and all these different things, most notably Ryan Day. And then they tend to waver and falter on the biggest stages when it matters most. So I'm taking a prove it to me each week attitude to this run game. But I thought they did some things well today. Will Howard was fine today, 21 to 26. It felt like there was a lot of passes, though, that were like behind or late or just not on time. And I don't know, like that didn't, something seemed off with him. Like I was back to feeling like what I felt like before the Oregon game with him, where it was like, there's just something missing. And I don't like that this late in the year. I'm feeling that way. He still was great overall, 21 26, 260 yards, 3 touchdowns. Um, Felt like there was just some inconsistencies there. I still have faith in Will. I'm not sitting here saying he's not the upgrade that we've been saying that he is over Kyle McCord. I think the Oregon game showed us a lot. I think even last week showed us a lot against Penn State, where he throws a pick six, the team's down 10-0 early. He moves past it. He has the fumble go off his leg out of the side of the end zone for a touchback. He shakes that off, and he still leads his team to victory. I've never questioned his ability to sort of have that short-term memory and just kind of keep it moving when he needs to and focus on the next drive. I think that's a big part of the characteristics that they like in Will Howard. But I don't know. Something felt a little off today, even though I thought he played overall a good game. And that's obviously shown in the stats. Jeremiah Smith finding the end zone again, leading the team with 6 catches, 87 yards. Carnell Tate had 6 catches for 56 yards. Emeka Ibuka really was like absent in this entire game until he caught the 10-yard touchdown pass late in this game. And I mean, that was the touchdown that basically sealed the deal for the starters. The final touchdown early fourth quarter, he scores 45-0, and they call off the dogs after that. But it took that long for Emeka Ibuka to really get involved. And I think that speaks to, we know that Ohio State has great receivers, but just like how Will has gotten more and more comfortable with guys that maybe I don't want to say we didn't expect, because we knew Carnell Tate was going to be one of these top 3 guys, but the last couple of weeks, he's really relied on Tate for some things. Brandon Inniss had another catch today. He had the touchdown last week against Penn State. So it seems like Will is finding his stride, and in terms of his chemistry with all these guys across this offense. But like there were some high passes. On the first drive, the one to G. Scott, too high for a dude that was wide open. Like that, and that's the stuff I'm referring to. At the sum of its parts, his day today, Will Howard's, was not bad. When you're 21 to 26, 260 yards and 3 touchdowns, I'm not going to sit here and gripe and cry over spilled milk of a couple bad passes. But it just seems like those inconsistent passes are happening more often than I'm comfortable with, I guess. And those are the types of things that like can win you and lose you games in the margins when you're playing better teams like in Indiana or like an Oregon in the conference championship game again, or like a Georgia in the playoff, or some of these other playoff teams. So it's not that I feel good that Will can be the team to win you a national championship if he plays at his best. I just don't want him to be the reason why you lose those games either, those big games, because he misses on a throw here or there. It's not that I need to see more. It's just that I wanted to be a little more consistent and not make me feel so stressed about the idea that he's out there missing a few passes that should be sort of routine, if you will. So listen, overall a good day though. You win 45-0. There's not a lot to complain about. I was deathly afraid for a moment there when Carson Hinsman went down with the knee injury in the first half. That felt like a well, that's it, season's over moment. I'm not even kidding. That's hyperbole, and I'm not even kidding you guys. Like, I was like, my God, how many more offensive line injuries can this team take? What the hell is going to happen now? Who's going to fill in? Is it going to be Luke Montgomery in that spot? And then Carson jogged to the locker room at the half, came back out and played in the second half, and all my fears were averted. But it's just another it was another sign of just how limited and the lack of depth that this team has along the offensive line, and how one more injury on that group with that group could just throw a wrench in any of the plans that they could possibly have moving forward. Like, and it's again, like, as I go into these games holding my breath about is the offensive line going to perform well today? Is the run game going to be there today? I do that same thing when it comes to injuries with that group. I'm like, every play, I just hold my breath and pray to God, pray to the football gods that another offensive lineman doesn't get hurt, because Ohio State just cannot afford to lose another offensive lineman to injury. So I was glad that he was okay. I almost want to just say put him in bubble wrap, put him and Donovan Jackson in bubble wrap for the Northwestern game. Get like a nice 21-0 lead, and then just sit them down and say, you're good. We need you for Indiana. We need you for Michigan. We need you for Big Ten championship and beyond. I don't need to risk these guys. I'm being sort of tongue in cheek here, but I don't need to risk these guys getting hurt in a game against Northwestern that the Buckeyes should win handily next week. We will talk about that in our preview show coming up midway through the week, so stay tuned for that. But man, oh man, did that leave me just I was sweating a little bit there. Like, great, another offensive line injury. Can't afford that. Last thing that the Buckeyes can't afford. And I was already like spelling doomsday scenarios about why their playoff and championship hopes were just over right then and there. But Carson's been a nice sort of fill-in at the left guard spot. And I think overall, like this Ohio State team, I like that they have a couple games here to sort of get that group building momentum, like we saw at the end of the Penn State game, before they get tested against Indiana and some of these other tough teams. And I felt overall pretty good about the offensive line today. But again, I'm going to take a wait and see approach each and every single week, where I'm just like, you got to prove to me that you can still be physical, run the football. And we'll see if they can do that against Northwestern next week. That brings us to the tail end of the show, the final portion of the post-game show that we like to do every single week. We call it Like It, Love It, and Leave It. The 3 L's is maybe another good word for it. And we start. Also, guys, you can jump in with your Like It, Love It, and Leave It in the 92 The Fan YouTube comments. Let us know what you liked, loved, and would leave from this game against Purdue today. You can also chime in on Twitter at Spencito_, where you can hit me up if you have a Like It, Love It, and Leave It that you want to give us. But my Like It for this game, if I could find that section of my sheet here, my Like It for this game, I want to go back real quick. I'm going to give you 2 things, but the defense hitting its stride, which I had talked ad nauseum about earlier on in the show, just really pleased with that group overall, and it's good to see them sort of coming together at the right time, it feels. And again, I think they are plenty championship caliber. I also will say, though, I saw this video after the game. The best damn band in the land, they made a bear. They basically marched their way into a bear formation, and then made the bear stand on its hind legs and take a shit, and had the poop emoji on there coming over to cover the Michigan logo. Absolutely hilarious. Any dig at Michigan is a good dig in my book, and that was phenomenal. The best damn band in the land, we know that, and they continue to just surprise us, provide great entertainment, and make us laugh our asses off every single week. That was good. Well done by the best damn band in the land. That brings us to our Love It for the Purdue win. And I love that Chip Kelly, this guy has been in his bag the last 2 weeks. It's like he saw what happened in the Nebraska game, where that offense couldn't do anything, and it was like edge of your seat. You were just deathly afraid how that game was going to end. And the last 2 weeks, he has done a tremendous job at like helping Donovan Jackson, doing stuff that was setting up formations so that Donovan Jackson had a little help, so it wasn't just left on an island all the time. Running plays that get the opposing defense out of position. Last week they ran that little like fake option play where Howard would just kind of toss it out to either Judkins or Henderson, and it got like 10 plus yards every time. And then this week there was a bunch of motion plays that he used. He was getting guys open in space. The G. Scott touchdown, which he scored early on in that game, like got him crossing the field wide open. Emeka was wide open on his touchdown. Like I feel like Chip Kelly, like the defense, is balling right now in terms of the way he's calling plays and putting guys in position to be successful, making Will Howard comfortable, setting up his offensive line that we know is banged up for success. he's been really, really good. And in the same way I feel the defense is championship caliber, I'm nervous about the offense every single week and how physical they're going to be, how they're going to be able to run the ball. But I feel good. I feel better about the Ohio State, their chances of winning the championship, knowing that Chip Kelly's calling the plays more so than I ever did with Ryan Day, because that dude is a mastermind and he's doing some really impressive creative stuff of late that has me excited about what kind of lies ahead and what types of stuff he might be saving for some of these bigger matchups here down the stretch and potentially in a Big Ten championship rematch with Oregon or the college football playoff and beyond. So I'm excited to see what else he has in store, but he's been really, really good these last 2 weeks. And lastly, last but not least, we get to our leave it for the game. And plain and simple, guys, I'm leaving the offensive line injuries. I know Carson Hinsman was okay. Thank God. Like, what gods do I have to pray to? What do I have to sacrifice? I won't sacrifice any children, living people, but if I have to give something up, my sweet tooth that it's been diving into my son's bag of candy the last week, if I like whatever I have to cut myself off from to make sure and ensure, if I have to burn some sage or I don't know, start a shrine in my closet for Carson Hinsman or just the offensive line in general, every single one of them, whatever I have to do to get the football gods on our side to keep that offensive line healthy, I will do it because I don't want to see anybody else get hurt and go down in that group. I feel pretty good about the sort of makeshift team that they've established here up front. And if they lose another guy, I'm going to lose my mind. That's all I got to say. So the fact that the fact that Ohio State even flirted with that today, with Carson Hinsman going down, grabbing out his leg, not great. Leave the injuries in the past. No more injuries to the offensive line, at least the rest of the season. Really, no more injuries the rest of the season in general, but especially on the offensive line. Can't afford any more of those. And so I'm leaving all that bad juju. I was going to say I'm leaving it in Columbus, but that doesn't. You don't want it in Columbus. I'm putting it on Purdue's bus, and they're taking it home with them. I don't want any more of that in Columbus. I don't want any more of that around Ohio State. Leave it wherever you got to leave it, but don't let it come into Northwestern or I guess Wrigley Field next week. All right, guys, a quicker show today. It's all good. There wasn't. I don't know that we had to like exhaust the topic here in a 45-0 win for the Buckeyes. So, but let me know your like it, love it, leave it from the Buckeyes 45-0 win over Purdue in the comment section of the 92 The Fan YouTube channel or on Twitter at @Spencito_ is where you can find me. I will be back. And we should have a new co-host starting at some point next week. I don't know if it's going to be the midweek show. It might be the post-game show after the Northwestern game. We will see. But the dominoes are falling in place for us to potentially have that sort of settled here in the coming week. But in the meantime, we appreciate you guys liking, subscribing, reviewing the Sons of the Shoe podcast, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Apple, Spotify, the Odyssey app. Did I mention Apple? And, of course, the 92 The Fan YouTube channel. Appreciate you guys stopping on by. Big win for the Buckeyes. We will talk to you guys about Northwestern next week. Last sort of tune-up game before the home stretch of the season. Until then, enjoy your weekend and go Bucks.